question for you all. Does Hollywood hate men? That's something we'll be going through in two videos in one from two separate channels that we'll be reacting to. One from Film Threat and the other from Echo Chamberlain, I believe. Discussing on Hollywood's like just obsession in the past handful of years of just trying to cater to women on the foundation of boys' properties, which some of the studios are trying to scale back now because they realize they've been screwing things up. Not like women can enjoy what is geared towards guys. They were there. It just was like a good portion, but they, some of these studios are trying to force so many women who does not care about this stuff, trying to get them to get more dollars, trying to get them involved with this stuff that didn't initially care, and as a result ends up pleasing nobody, because the girls that were there don't like what the direction that they take in some of these Star Wars, Marvel, etc., recently Star Trek, and outside of the shills, they there's not many people who are liking what they're putting out. So now a lot of them are scrambling, trying to, how do we win back the men? You first of all, you shouldn't try to fix what's broken. But we'll be checking out these videos, starting with Film Thread, and the title, "Do Women Ruin Every Creative Property Men Love?" So let's check out. And by the way, please do me a huge favor and check out this channel as well. But also leave a comment below. Let me know what your thoughts are, and follow me on my various links as I review and react to videos, as well as review content, as well as stream video games on my YouTube and Twitch channels.
At the risk of being sexist, I have to ask a question. Do women understand male franchises? And let me qualify this. There was a post that went viral here. I wanna bring it up. Pretty interesting post that got over 1.4 million views from Bill Holt. Says, opinion: women killed Star Trek, women killed Star Wars, women killed the MCU, women killed the DCU, women killed Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power, women killed James Bond, women killed Indiana Jones, women killed The Witcher, women killed Sandman, women killed Ghostbusters, women killed Terminator, women killed Alien, women killed Predator, women killed Men in Black, women killed Mad Max, women killed Monarch/Godzilla, women killed Charlie's Angels, and women and gays killed Doctor Who. Did I miss anything?
And this list is just, because I heard about this list, it's the first time I'm actually seeing it. That is terrible. That is just, even with something like Charlie's Angels, which was fine from like the 70s version or even like the early 2000s, they were fine. Women can get involved. Women growing up, the first two Charlie's Angels in the early 2000s, girls that I knew in middle school and high school loved those films. They were fine, even though they're, you can say it was catering to like the male gaze, but women liked them because they like hot badass women that dress, sexy. Women like dressing sexy, and yeah, a lot of it is for the male gaze because they are trying to attract a lot of men's eyes to get compliments or get like attention from the men that they hope to get involved with. I'm not a Doctor Who guy, but I respected history of Doctor Who, and the fact that they were trying to force in a woman and then force in a gay black man is just like, it's just like, you clearly, like, A, you're trying too hard, and B, it's like all of this stuff is just like so unnecessary. Don't get me started on Men in Black International. That was a huge slop of crap. It's like, oh my god, it's so many. It's so many. James Bond, the way they ended Daniel Craig stuff, and I love Daniel Craig. I respect him as an actor. He does great work, but he was James Bond for the longest time. That's pretty much he's intrinsically tied into that character. He should have some very deep reverence for that. I'm pretty sure he has reverence for the character, but it's like Deadpool and Wolverine with Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman. There's like an air of respect they have for those characters because they did it for so long, and they would not like. They have the carte blanche to say like, "Yo, what direction you taking with my character that I've been working so hard to fine tune over the years? Oh no, I'm not going down this road. No, I'm not accepting this." Daniel Craig should have the, like, even though he wanted to be done with the character, you know, by that point of the last movie or even the movie before last, he should still want to make sure that it's left with some grace and respect. The people who, you know, largely are, you know, been running like these studios, or at least trying to, you know, be cautious, not offend nobody, or trying to get more women involved. They hiring people who don't understand the IP or don't respect the IP, or they have some kind of chip on their shoulder and trying to like force in agendas, or like, because, you know, some dude in some space did them wrong, and now they trying to get back by pushing that into media for us to deal with, because they couldn't be bothered to go to a freaking therapist, a decent one, and not one that's catering to their freaking feelings and exacerbating the situation. Now the rest of us got to deal with it, and it's ruining the stuff that we enjoyed. It's supposed to be escapism.
1.4 million views,
finger wagging a lot of these things,
5,000 reposts. Does Bill Holt have a point?
Speaking of Indiana Jones ruining Tomb Raider, they're probably gonna ruin Tomb Raider, the new one.
Now I'll say this: many incredibly talented women have been involved in Star Trek and Star Wars. Most notably, Marsha Lucas, who edited Star Wars, George's former wife, DC Fontana, writer on the original Star Trek series, but too much feminine energy in a male franchise.
Yeah, and I like that he said that. Yes, it's not saying like women involved in this stuff in the past weren't good. They knew the assignment. They respected the canon. They come into this space with respect and reverence, and they, you know, added on instead of trying to tear down, to reshape it to whatever they think it's appropriate for the modern audience. And I like this, you know, I don't know how to even pronounce that name that popped out right here. Women killed every men's only space, so men killed their women only spaces right back. Yeah, how petty would we look if we decide, like, let's say, like, okay, I decided to step in and run a Mattel. I was like, you know what? How we get more boys to be involved with Barbie? So let's make every Barbie girl like, you know, a Susie Homemaker housewife that bends over backwards to please Ken. Ken is like, you know, pretty much like the Rambo type of character now that he has to save a ditzy Barbie from the clutches of some kind of bad. It's pretty much turned into like an action movie, pretty much, and she's like a goofy damsel that doesn't know any better. and it's just all explosions and giving like Barbie giant boobs in the butt and like and make it raunchy and stuff. Completely ruining what made Barbie fun for girls. You wouldn't like that. Women would be very much up in arms about that kind of stuff. Why y'all messing on Barbie and making all these TikToks, crying on social media and all this stuff? Like, no, you ruin stuff that we like. It's only fair we ruin stuff that you like. Maybe you'll learn to keep to your lane.
We're talking
Does
about.
it work? Like, is this radical to say? Like, I really want to know. Like, can women understand a male franchise?
They're not trying to.
They don't want to understand it. They want to take it over. I think, like, in my opinion, it's the modern woman feminist ideology that killed all of these franchises. The women who think that they are just as equal, if not better, than their male counterparts, that killed all of these franchises, because they take that ideology and that thinking and they try to put it into these franchises. They don't want a woman to be equal to Luke Skywalker. They want her to be better than Luke Skywalker. That is their thinking. That's why they killed all of these franchises, because they don't understand that hero's journey. They just want it a quick thing. They don't understand the struggle of that, the heroism that comes with that. They just want to be better. And so they'll take those characteristics, put it on this character, and make her better.
I think there's female directors who can do a decent job of writing an already established character, right? I think like Bryce Dallas Howard, she directed some of the best episodes of The Mandalorian.
Yeah, Bryce Dallas Howard.
I think that there are women that can.
Instead of like Leslie Headland,
they're capable, man. I just don't.
Leslie Headland or crap. What was that one that just stepped down? Kathleen Kennedy. If you wanted to like push like a narrative or whatever, you should have chosen Bryce Dallas Howard at the very least. Because she respected the material, because she comes from a respectable director who taught her the ins and outs. Not only taught her the ins and outs of the industry, but also the fact that she respects her father, and the fact that she grew up with great male authority figures, so she doesn't have any kind of hate boner for men as a whole. That helps. She isn't on no female ideology and pushing like forces female crap. She understands the properties. She understands like source material and the hero's journey, all that stuff. So when she walks into a space, she is not trying to tear anything down. She has respect. She should have been chosen to do most of the. If you wanted to push this whole female narrative, you could have, at the very least, chosen a woman who respected her stuff and not claimed to respect.
I think this guy's right as far as you can't give him a franchise, though, man. You can't give him these characters and say run with it, right?
You
like
can.
That's the problem.
It's who you're giving it to. Again, Witcher is the perfect test case, because it's woman with an ideology behind her that didn't like the original source material, didn't like fans of the source material, went like Henry sitting there walking around with the books saying, what about this, and that? They completely did that. They took everything from Geralt focused to make it the Yennefer show and the series. And even though naturally those would have been strong, lovable characters that everyone likes, and Ciri would have taken over the story anyway, that's not enough. You got to go straight to fuck all the men and boom. And that's across the board. Most of these have that behind it. Instead of just letting Luke be Luke, you take it away from him and you just give it to Rey.
Dark Vengeance stole my point in the chat.
And they can't allow a woman to be taught by a male mentor, especially a white male mentor. God forbid, because she has to have to learn something from a male authority figure who's been through the grind and would know better than her. Can't have that, because that doesn't push the narrative. It doesn't look good on a feminist standing point, because women has to be better at every little thing imaginable.
It's about the agenda.
If she doesn't have a mentor, it has to be a woman or a gay man or some effeminized thing. in order to make it less problematic.
Agenda over the story. The story is what mattered to the people that created these franchises. They cared about the story. They cared about the characters. They cared about storytelling. They care about pushing their ideology, taking over, like Steph just said. They want to take over your franchise that's already popular, reshape it into something for the ladies, all right, or something for their, general feminist ideology. That's what it is that they're doing. They don't tell stories, all right? How many times do we see these stories like, this isn't a story? You're telling me a talking point of an agenda. All right. I don't want to hear your bullet points on what your what your ideology is. I want a story that has well-drawn characters, well-written action scenes, and all of that. They can't give that to us. That's what The Acolyte was. The Acolyte was one giant, just feminist, girl boss, lesbian, like cry fest, on how oppressive everything has been in the Jedi Order. That's basically what these creatives, I call them creatives.
That's why I like how John Watts did like Skeleton Crew, even though they didn't get like much favor as it probably should, because it's still getting that fallout backlash from Acolyte a few months prior. If the Acolyte didn't exist, Skeleton Crew would probably gotten a lot better responses instead of just apathy, because nobody care either way, because it's just people are just so done with Star Wars that Skeleton Crew didn't get like a fair shake, because John Watts cares about the material. He wasn't. It's just, it takes certain creative geniuses and directors that are up here that can't be bullied by Disney execs, like John Watts, who did a very successful job with the Spider-Man films, stepped away from the MCU to do Skeleton Crew. He should have gotten like a lot more praise, because he, like the showrunner for the Andor, wasn't gonna get bullied into putting nonsense into their material. Kids in Skeleton Crew did a fine job, and people were, it wasn't crazy agenda like the Acolyte was. And that's a shame. The Acolyte really did some freaking damage, and Star Trek with the Starfleet Academy right now is doing the exact same thing. Paramount should have saw what happened to Acolyte. Matter of fact, every other studio should have saw what happened to Acolyte, and it's like, okay, we need to restructure a lot of this crap, because whatever we got going on, make sure we don't end up like Acolyte. They saw what's going on with Starfleet Academy. It was like, okay, we gotta restructure all this stuff. We gotta push this, further, the release date further along, because we can't ship this crap out. We can't. But no, they released it. We got a bunch of poorly, out of shape, women in Starfleet, feminized men for the most part. It's just like, none of you would be in Starfleet. Not any one of you will be anywhere near an academy, let alone be allowed to be on the deck of an Enterprise ship. Y'all unfit. It's supposed to be for the best of the best, and it's like, oh god, it was so dumb.
It's with quotations. That's what they think that people want to watch, because that's what they want to watch. They want to watch stories that give them, give oxygen to their grief.
And it's not like, movies or TV shows never had like some kind of message, because that's what they like to throw at your face, like, oh, comics always were political. Yeah, but that wasn't the first thing at the gate, A, and B, they wasn't lecturing you. They wasn't like talking down to the audience or trying to tell you what you should think. They left it open-ended to give you something to talk about amongst your peers. That is the difference. Don't make it the first thing out the gate. Don't try to push this whole thing about, I'm the first female blah blah blah. Oh, I'm the token person of color for this particular blah blah blah. If you're starting out like that, you're off on a bad start. I don't care if you're a female. Can you produce a good story that will stand the test of time? I don't care about your genitals or who you have sex with or your political ideology. Can you leave that crap at the door when you come into work and you're making some stories for the general masses and not your hyper specific community?
And say, "Oh, how oppressed I am," and nobody.
Filoni's a feminist too, by the way, and his wife is a feminist, so that's why there's so much adjacent. So this really is agenda. Yeah. It's just that statistically speaking, a lot of them are the liberal women that all the things. They're the ones driving into traffic and obstructing federal officers too. It's just a common denominator of a possessed ideology, and if they're not protesting in the streets, they're protesting in the writers' room. It's a whole fucking thing.
But if there are good women that can write good stories. J.K. Rowling. All right, J.K. Rowling is a woman, and she knows how to tell a good damn
K-pop
story.
Demon Hunters was women.
Thank you. Yeah.
So, boom. You notice how, I know, there's certain leftists that really don't care, like the hardcore ones, don't care for J.K. Rowling. But you can't, they cannot argue, J.K. Rowling make incredible stories. Incredible, stand the test of time stories. Well-crafted characters. Layered characters, both male and female. K-pop Demon Hunters, I love that film. It's probably, like I mentioned before, my number one film of 2025, K-pop Demon Hunters. Most of them are female, and they were done correctly. That's just do that. Don't try to make them super perfect. Don't try to try to push men down just to rise them up. They have they can look good. You don't have to be ashamed of their beauty. They don't have to look like slobs just to cater to women who look like slobs in real life because they want to feel good about themselves as they put on their clothes. It's like, no, this is still fantasy worlds at the end of the day. It's like, give them the hero's journey. That's the formula for a reason.
You can do it, but go ahead.
Well, Nia DaCosta didn't feminize 28 years later.
Yeah, The Witcher is a good example of that because you had Henry Cavill who knew the story, who knew the property well, who knew the character well, and he butted heads because they didn't want to make him that character, that strong masculine character. And so now we have Liam Hemsworth coming in, and now his portrayal is more sensitive, it's more vulnerable, it's more emotional. Why? Because that's how women view things. That's how women view characters, is from the point of view of emotion and vulnerability. These are women characteristics that can't be put on a man because men just aren't like that. Sure, there are sensitive men, vulnerable men, but like heroic men, things like that, these types of characters that are already written a certain way, you just can't change them into this vulnerable, soft character.
Right. Well, but this is coming from
not only that, also put in therapy speak in a lot of stuff. It's like, and that's what gets me so sick of therapy stuff. They kind of trying to push in every little thing. Sometimes you want a guy to just get shit done and not worry about somebody's fifis all day long, or doing a good cry to see your vulnerable side. No, you need the Rambo, the John McClane, the Terminator. You need just badasses that's after your feelings won't get crap done. For the most part, that's what we expect.
It's a sensitive man on screen.
Well, and it's coming from a group of people who say that gender is a construct, right? So their entire motive is to just be like, everything that you believe about all of this is just bullshit, and what I believe is right. But either way, all of these studios, all of these companies that own all of these properties, you would think that the intelligent thing to do would be to bring in people that are I have a vision and a passion, but also I know what the fans want and I know what this franchise or this brand is, right? But instead they're hiring people that are no, we're going to start from scratch. We're going to completely turn it on its head and make it something entirely new. And it just does. I don't understand why these property owners Disney or whoever that owns Marvel and everybody else, that it would continue to just hire people who are on the basis of saying I'm going to assassinate your brand, by the way. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
I think it's because they thought that in the future it'll be more profitable, and eventually it'll become profitable. Eventually the audience that we want will come, right? And that's why it was based on an eventuality that we're doing the right thing, we're going in the right direction, this is really what people want, and eventually it'll become profitable. When in reality, like even now, I think the Disney park Galaxy's Edge, which was based on the sequel trilogy, is now bringing in characters from the original trilogy and finally putting in John Williams music. Yeah. Like that's how it should have been. But they were,
in my opinion, I think it all started around the Me Too movement. It's just like a cultural push too far in the other direction to try to please like females or the feminists because they felt wronged by certain bad men in certain spots in the industry, and this is their too hard correction. They're like, okay, let's push the females in every little thing. Let's make them super perfect. Let's make them strong. To take, like, you look at something like, the Black Widow movie. You can't tell me that wasn't some kind of movement to give like a rah-rah moment to women who dealt with fat Weinstein kind of guys out there in the world, to try to give them something like to rally behind and stuff like that. They kept doing it, A, and B, they kind of overplayed their hand and didn't like scale it back when things kind of toned down a bit, because it's like, okay, this is like too much. Now every guy is like either incompetent, gay, feminized weakling, or a straight up monster. Because that's primarily the three that you end up seeing in a lot of these properties on this list. Very rarely you get an actual like strong masculine presence that is competent and a good guy in these things. They won't put up lip from some know-it-all chick that tries to tell them how things should be.
Just like, no, eventually the people will like it, people will get on board, and that just didn't happen. So what are they
doing?
That's
across the board, right? That's not just Star Wars. That's with all the woke shit. For 10 years we got all the woke supplied by all the BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguards that like, we know you're going to lose money, and everyone that doesn't get on board is toxic and racist and sexist. Mm-hmm. You saw that we still see it, but it doesn't work. They thought they could like subsidize them through the tanking and that we would eventually get on board with the plan, but we're not, because there's just certain things that are in. If you wiped out civilization right now and we all regrew back and started getting cars again, a lot of the dumb things we argue about would go away. But there's some core things that would always be there. There's a difference between men and women. All right. Mm-hmm. The racism shit is dumb in the construct, but there will always be gender differences. And so when you try to say that it's just it's not real and there's no difference between that, it falls apart. So now you got the youth that apparently have all conservative values and they're not into all the LGBTQ because you just no amount. You need to go back to making money. You were never going to be able to force that big a change on society.
I think part of it is that there are maybe too many women in the writer's room. You need a balance. And when they talk about boys and girls playing with toys, let me just say this. I raised a boy and a girl. My kids were born about 2 years apart. I had a girl and a boy. I can just tell you, they're very different as kids. They are very different. And they like different toys. They like different things. The only thing I would say that's sort of gender neutral might be dinosaurs. That's the only thing. Like dinosaurs appeal to boys and girls. But the way that they say that boys and girls play with toys, boys want to be, say, Batman. A boy wants to be Batman or be Superman. And a girl wants to turn Superman into her. Yeah. So that's why you get like all these there's so many cases of a male comic book hero that suddenly has a female version, like a Supergirl or a Batgirl or a Shazam family, Captain Marvel family, whatever, but never the other direction. Never the direction of
they can be done well.
What?
Like those characters that you just said, She-Hulk. She-Hulk was a perfect example. she's fun in the fucking comics.
Yeah,
she's super fun.
One of my favorite characters,
right?
Man.
And Supergirl can be written well. They can be done well. But then when you get someone like Jessica Gao, who specifically made She-Hulk to dunk on the toxic white males and made it a whole meta thing, right? It's all just attack. They like it because we don't like it, as was said earlier.
Agenda
over
ideology.
It's all that's what woke is. Agenda over story and character. So yeah.
Yeah. I like that point too. Because people are asking like they don't know what woke means. Like, no, we know what woke means. You don't know what woke means. We just give a clear definition of what woke means. It's this agenda over story. If you put agenda over story, then that classify it as woke. Putting things in that's completely unnecessary just to fill a quota, that is woke. Okay? If I'm telling like a story about like a Roman legion in ancient Rome, I don't need to put in. Well, they put in Denzel Washington. I'm not saying like there isn't like or John Hansu. It's not saying like there's weren't like a or a few black people amongst them, but I don't know. It's like a terrible example, but you like if you just throw in, I don't know, like let's go with Native American. Okay, Native American was never anywhere near ancient Rome. Thousands and thousands of miles across the other side of the world doing their own thing, completely ignorant of ancient Rome. But you thought like, oh, let's put in like a Native American person in like an actor whose origins clearly Native American, and a woman in like as a gladiator, and it's like what are we doing? Or it's just like you see like the Vikings and you got like that TV show and you got like a female Viking, not just like the sorry, I'm walking that back a little bit, a black female Viking leader, I think it was, or something like that. I was like, no, that like you using like a particular historical backdrop that you know full well black people ain't got wasn't nowhere near like the Norwegian area during the height of the Viking age. That's nonsensical. That is what we're talking about. It's like you throwing in stuff that doesn't, like you treating it like you're making a college campus kind of movie or something like that, where you expect to see multicultural whatevers in this thing. Sometimes there's movies or TV shows that's gotta be primarily black people or primarily white people or primarily Asian people. It's like you look at something like Crazy Rich Asians. I don't need to see a black person among that crowd. You got Awkwafina, that's more than enough. You got another one from Echo Chamber.
Boys deserve to be entertained. Modern Hollywood produces nothing special for them, and I'm going to explain that this isn't just due to ideology. There's something more fundamental and more disheartening going on. Firstly, we need to spell out what boys want and are missing out on. Boys are thrilled by the liminal territory of reaching for a higher branch, of attempting a skate trick just beyond their skills, some new sensation that is fueled with originality and risk. In entertainment, it is the same. They are magnetically drawn to content that is several years beyond their age, with violence and gore and suspense they're not sure they'll be able to handle. Stuff that might make them flinch or leave them reeling when they're trying to get to sleep. They love stuff that pushes those limits. Terminator 2. Non-stop adrenaline-fueled kinetic action with an awesome robot chasing another awesome robot with shotgun twirls, motorbikes, a truck, a freeway obstacle course, and Guns N' Roses playing over the top. The Matrix, where a hero was revealed as just a drone in a pod, his life force being harvested like millions more in a terrifying existential dystopian nightmare, who then gets cybernetic upgrades and uploads skill sets into his brain like freebasing pure awesomeness. Can modern Hollywood produce any content like this that would viscerally appeal to boys? Fuck no. Boys are capable of aching yearning for films that strike surprising registers of sensitivity. Bastian Bucks, up in the school attic at night, reading the never-ending story. The sensitive boy in The Goonies, who speaks solemnly to the skeletons of the pirates. Elliot in E.T., born aloft, face pale in Halloween makeup, cycling by the light of a full moon. Can contemporary Hollywood produce content that strikes at these sensitive registers for boys? Like fuck it can. Boys also like third act overload. Ghostbusters starts off as a goofy premise that escalates into a madcap spectacle, where the Ghostbusters are cheered by enormous crowds to the rhythm of a killer theme song as they do battle with a gigantic Stay Puft mascot who rampages through Manhattan and explodes after the heroes' backpack lasers cross their streams to disintegrate it. The Blues Brothers begins as a small fetch quest, but by the third act, the two heroes are involved in an over-the-top car chase where police cruisers are crashing wildly with a constant blare of sirens, culminating with SWAT scaling the building the two characters are in, with helicopters hammering overhead and army vehicles in the barricaded streets below. Boys watching are nearly falling off the couch in delight at the comic escalation and anarchic excess. Can contemporary Hollywood create that kind of manic spirit of escalation and overload that makes boys ecstatic? Abso-fucking-lutely not. Boys are also incredibly keen on intelligent sci-fi fantasy, with a clear sense of the adults having conceived of and written scripts at least as much for themselves as for a young audience. Boys love the idea of adults writing with grown-up sensibilities and grown-up interests in science and ethics and technology. They feel drawn into something sophisticated and substantial. Star Trek The Wrath of Khan, revolving around a complex scientific device, with literary references to Moby Dick and A Tale of Two Cities, old-school TV, Children of the Stones, where a teen boy son of a technical engineer uses his own aptitude and curiosity with physics and astronomy and other STEM proclivities to ably and competently solve a mystery. The Tripods, a trio of boys traverse Europe conquered and monitored by tripod alien overlords who cap the heads of teenagers with a brain-controlling gold plate enmeshed into the skull. The boys are faced with conundrums about free will and then existential horrors in the Tripod City. Can modern Hollywood create content that is gripping in its adult approaches and with boys depicted as adept at problem-solving and pushed to the limits of resourcefulness and courage? Fuck no. What are boys presented with instead? Lord of the fucking Rings, the Rings of Power, with meandering story arcs, dithering characters, hyper-diversity foregrounded, irrespective of context, and a ludicrous, snide, supreme girl boss Galadriel who routinely sends up and bests men. Doctor Who, full of pizzazz, who's overly emotional and cries in literally every episode. Star Wars, where Supreme Girl Boss Rey gets ever more powerful without ever having any flaws. Marvel, with a lightweight Fantastic Four and morally empty girl boss in Ironheart, and DC, with a lightweight Superman who is often self-deprecating and high-strung, or Star Trek Starfleet Academy, where a group of overweight or eccentric or lesbian women run the show and lecture a new generation of hyper-diverse and tedious cadets.
How can anybody in good conscience look at something like whoever's name, whatever who was playing Doctor Who, sitting there walking out with a green dress, crying every freaking episode, and say, "Oh yeah, that's the moneymaker right there." It's like,
Disney has even slowly come to realize it has lost this huge demographic, releasing a memo asking how it can appeal to boys again. Too late, many have already turned to gaming and anime, and they're not especially interested in being lured back. You done fucked up. You shit the bed. You screwed the pooch. You screwed the pooch anally, so that the pooch's slackened sphincter caused it to also shit the bed. But here's the thing. If this were only about ideology, some mix of wanting to empower female characters and give agency and visibility to diverse groups, spiked with some muddled, discredited notions about social constructivism and gender, or even some attitudinal thing about the contemporary world, that would be bad enough. But the problems run much deeper. It's developmental. Modern writers' rooms are now staffed by people whose imaginations aren't able to create the kinds of stories boys once devoured and obsessed over. Many of the people now tasked with writing spectacle, danger, myth, and power fantasy didn't grow up rehearsing those things in play. Earlier generations performed imagination, daily, physically, socially, recklessly. They built worlds with whatever was to hand. Action figures, Legos, sticks,
I feel bad for Anthony Mackie and Harrison Ford because they, like, you see, like, before the movie Brave New World came out, you see all these little still images and behind the scenes stuff. They look actually legit proud of what they made. And I don't know if they was, originally they probably set thing one way, so I guess they was proud of, like, stuff before things were, like, constantly rewritten. Or they just trying to put like a face like, oh yeah, this is gonna be the shit right here. It's like, how can you good conscience like look at that and like, ugh, God, and just face palm with the Frankenstein monstrosity that was Brave New World.
Bikes, rooftops, skate ramps, back gardens, creeks, or abandoned lots. Characters died and returned, factions formed and dissolved, toy brands crossed over, IPs were mishmashed, narrative coherence morphed with imaginative drive. And this imagination was fused with exertion, danger, and consequence. Running, climbing, falling, bruising, mastering fear. Adrenaline didn't arrive through a screen, it arrived through the body. Decades of research shows this isn't just nostalgia talking. For the newer generation, that kind of play has diminished. Unscheduled outdoor play steadily gave way to structured, adult-regulated activities and indoor sedentary alternatives. Children now spend far more hours engaging with screens than wandering woods, building forts, or chasing friends through fields. Screens are not just another toy. They deliver immediate, externally supplied worlds with rules and narratives already defined. In unstructured play, the child must invent the world, the rules, the characters, the conflicts, and the stakes. Screens provide sensory stimulation and feedback, but they reduce the cognitive burden of creation itself. Even when digital games have immersive environments, and many do, they often function like highly engineered reward loops: anticipation, stimulus, feedback, reset. Designers aim to keep the players engaged, not thinking in gaps. There is rich evidence in game design research that many platforms are optimized to prolong engagement by creating habits of consumption rather than patterns of self-generated invention. The imagination that built worlds from sticks and figurines did so under conditions of delay and uncertainty. You didn't know what would happen next until you made it happen. That's where long, sustained narrative thinking begins. Holding an imaginary world in your head for hours, days, or weeks. That's proto-writing. That's world-building. With modern screen immersion, the imaginative load is reduced. Children consume narrative. They don't produce it in their own minds. It's just not possible that people could grow up with all that shit and not have it affect their raw compositional and imaginative instincts to at least some extent. In the past, there were these things called role-playing games. Basically, kids would spend all night conjuring up a world with a board, multi-sided dice, counters, and basic scripts. It relied not just on sustained imagination, but a collusion of the same imagined world. Now, the child does not have to imagine the dragon or defend a makeshift fortress at dusk. The game provides the world, the goals, the risks, the stakes. The child responds. They don't really invent. The well-known Torrance tests of creative thinking, which measure divergent thinking skills like fluency, originality, and elaboration, have shown that scores on these measures have stagnated or declined in many cohorts. It's the idea of divergency that's the most troubling. Philip K. Dick was divergent, and H.R. Giger, that off-kilter guy who dreamt up what would become the imagery for Alien, and George Lucas conjuring up THX 1138. You know where this notion of divergency has been largely redirected to? Come on, you must know. It's identity. Being half Latino, or Asian, or bisexual and Puerto Rican is a kind of substitute or wonky proxy for the idea of being divergent at a disproportionate rate to the idea of welcoming and rewarding creative and imaginative divergency. So when those children grow up and enter writing rooms, what do they bring with them? They bring fluency in media consumption. They bring sophistication in critique. They bring sensitivity to representation, discourse, and identity. What they often don't bring is instincts to roam imaginative hinterlands, to conceive grand, risky, mythic narratives that enthrall. and that are especially going to enthrall boys. They don't naturally reach for the kinds of stories that feel slightly irresponsible to tell, the ones boys latch onto because they feel real, because they were rehearsed physically and imaginatively long before a camera ever saw them. Instead, they default to what they know. Commentary, deconstruction, subversion. This is why so much modern writing feels bloodless, and why so much weird emphasis is put on snarky humor, put-downs, forced and attitude-heavy interactions. At that tight framing, narrowed into those exchanges, these writers have a better sense of control. There's less imagination there, less of an outer world. It's kind of safer. They compensate through empowerment, moralizing, and current-daying the viewer. Boys can smell that instantly. They deserve entertainment. For them, that is special. They don't articulate it in sociological terms. They just disengage. The story doesn't get argued about at lunch. It doesn't generate what-if speculation. It doesn't leave any long-term cultural footprint. Earlier generations of creators knew how to do this because their childhoods were messy, embodied, improvisational, and occasionally stupid, which is exactly what imagination needs. This is the quiet tragedy behind Hollywood's failure with boys. A generation of storytellers who never learned to live inside danger long enough to
or they ends up these studios hiring these agenda activists into these writers' rooms and kicking out or forcing out the competent writers who's been there for decades, who knows good storytelling, but because how they're doing it doesn't look too PC or might hurt somebody in the writers' room's feelings or is not like cultural appropriate or whatever, they end up getting forced out, and the only thing primarily is left is those who or either get along to get along or like gung-ho about their agenda and pushing out into this material for us to forcibly consume, and then using race or homophobia as a shield to protect any kind of criticism that get lobbed their way for putting out crap that most people do not care for, primarily guys. It seems like guys, and specifically white guys, are the only people that are allowed to be berated and dismissed and talked down to and disrespected without any pushback. And God help you, if you push back, they decide, oh, you're misogynist, and think that's gonna cut the mustard. That's what like my previous reaction video with Jake Monroe was going on about. At least one of the things he's bringing up in his topic about how men are treated and stuff, where it's like, you know, women gotta be always right. They cannot get pushed back because that looks mean. That looks misogynistic. Where are buzzwords they want to come up every other week just to avoid at all possible any accountability on their end. And these suckers, these sucker dudes who placate to this, know full well deep down this is messed up, but I don't know. They're suckers. Some might call them simps, or what Jake Monroe would have called them sneaky fuckers.
Make it compelling on the page. By the way, my novels are now available on Amazon, so you can.
But yeah, man, that is. Crossing my fingers, because Marvel, for the most part, is the only one I know that's like trying to scale back and try to rework in good faith, seemingly to try to win back like the guys, knowing that they screwed up. But everyone else right now is just a wait and see moment, because I think it wasn't until the Acolyte where Disney had to take some stock in what was going on under their command, and maybe Paramount gotta learn that hard lesson too with Starfleet Academy and have to take stock. Okay, and like hopefully other studios look into these kind of examples and it's like, okay, whatever we got going on, we need to take a hard look at it and like either cancel it or rework it to death. But we cannot keep pushing this crap out anymore. And start hiring real writers that isn't afraid to cross certain boundaries. That's why it took so long, because like the Naked Gun last year was so good, mostly because people are starving for good classic comedies that sometimes might get raunchy and isn't afraid to, cross certain boundaries, to really go there, because that's what comedy is. Because people, there are people asking, what happened to the raunchy comedies? Well, you let certain activists and feminists into certain spaces, killed all that because they're worried about not getting boycotted, or it's like, oh, that isn't politically correct. You can't talk about black people because there's a black people getting marginalized. It's victimhood. It's victimhood, gone amok. And these studios really need to take stock in a lot of this stuff and like know what they need to like cut out like a cancer. If I had kids, it's like there's gonna be like up to a point. Like I think like from the stuff that I've seen from like the 80s going all the way up to maybe 2019, if I'm really gonna give like a push it generously, all the content within that stuff, like within reason, my future kids, that is the general space I feel comfortable letting them watch, because that is like not like crazy. Everything after 2019 I'm gonna have to watch like a hawk, because I'm not trying to get my kids indoctrinated with a bunch of bull crap. That is my opinion. And hopefully those soon-to-be parents out there in the world would take that into consideration too with their own kids, and be confident in what they're watching. If not, check it out first before you watch it with your kids, or allow your kids to watch it on their own. But anyway, I will see you guys tomorrow. Going to get back to streaming some Digimon. But anyway, take care, and I'll see you all soon. Peace.